He refused every marriage deal placed in front of him. Then Dominic Vale saw one photograph of a woman running through the rain and gave an order that changed both their lives. Find her before her father does. But what happens when the man who promises to save you may be building another cage? Lila Hartwell stood beneath the cold lights of a roadside gas station outside New Orleans, one suitcase at her feet and a disposable phone trembling in her hand. Behind her waited the family that had already sold her future. Ahead of her waited a stranger whose name she did not yet know. This is more than a Mafia love story. It is a story about betrayal, survival, and the dangerous difference between being protected and being controlled. Stay until the end, because every choice Lila makes will change what freedom means. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. The message remained on Lila's screen long after the rain had swallowed the van. Your father is not the only man looking for you. She stood beside the kitchen window, holding the curtain an inch from the glass. The street beyond it looked harmless. Wet pavement, dark oak trees, a porch light flickering across the road. Somewhere far off, a streetcar bell rang once and faded into the warm New Orleans night. Maya came up behind her. Can you trace it? Not without giving them something to trace back. We call the police. Lila looked at her. Maya sighed. Conrad Hartwell attended charity dinners with police commissioners. Judges took his calls. Her father did not need to own every institution. He only needed enough people inside them to make help feel uncertain. Lila powered off the disposable phone and removed the battery. We leave tonight, Maya said. No. If they found you here, we cannot stay. Moving now gives them another trail. We do not know who sent the message or whether it was a threat. It sounded like one. It sounded like someone wanted me afraid. Maya held her gaze. It worked. Lila placed the pieces of the phone on the table. Yes, she said quietly. That is why I will not let them choose what I do next. For 6 days, Lila turned Maya's narrow house into a place that could warn them before danger entered. She replaced the front door camera, changed every password, and placed small sensors on the windows. A strip of clear tape above the back gate would show if someone crossed it. By the second morning, she knew the rhythm of the block. The elderly man next door opened his shutters at 6:15. A bakery truck stopped at 6:40. Children in blue uniforms crossed at 7:30. A woman with a red umbrella walked a terrier that hated bicycles. Everything had a pattern. Patterns meant safety until someone broke them. Lila applied for cybersecurity jobs under a shortened version of her name. She avoided companies with Philadelphia investors and removed location data from every file she sent. At night, she slept on Maya's sofa because it faced both doors. She woke when engines slowed outside. She woke when pipes knocked inside the walls. By the 5th day, Maya found her sitting on the kitchen floor with batteries arranged in neat rows. No, Maya said. Lila looked up. No what no to whatever this is. I am checking expiration dates. You grouped them by size. That makes sense. You labeled my spice cabinet yesterday. It needed structure. It needed cumin. Maya nudged the battery container away with her foot. We are going out tonight. No, that was not a question. Everything outside this house is a possible security problem. You have not been farther than the corner store in almost a week. You are trying to turn fear into a full-time job. Lila reached for another battery. Maya crouched in front of her. 1 hour. Public place. Crowded. We choose the table. You can bring 3 phones and a smoke bomb. I do not own a smoke bomb. Maya studied her. Lila looked away. You own a smoke bomb. It is not relevant. At 9:20 that evening, Lila stood beneath an unmarked blue door in the French Quarter, wearing a black dress. Music pressed through the brick walls while people moved past beneath balconies dripping with ferns. The rain had stopped, leaving the street glossy under amber lamps. A trumpet opened somewhere inside, slow and aching, and the sound seemed to pull the whole building closer. Inside, the club glowed with candlelight and polished brass. A singer stood near the piano, her voice wrapped around a song about a man who never came home. Servers moved between small tables carrying glasses that caught the light. Lila chose a table against the wall. From there, she could see the front door, the kitchen hallway, and a narrow service exit beside the stage. Maya sat across from her. "You are checking the room. I am admiring the architecture. You have not looked at the ceiling. The ceiling is not an exit." For the first 20 minutes, the noise helped. Maya told a story about a client who had hidden evidence inside a bag of frozen shrimp. Lila laughed despite herself. The sound felt unfamiliar coming from her own chest. A couple near the stage began to dance. No one stared at them. No one asked what their last names could buy. For a few minutes, Lila imagined a life in which entering a room did not feel like crossing enemy ground. Then Maya saw someone she knew near the bar. 2 minutes, she said. "Do not disappear. I am the one hiding." Exactly. Maya left. A man in a pale linen jacket stepped into her empty space. He was handsome in a careful way. Clean watch, expensive shoes, a smile polished by years of getting the answer he expected. "You are new," he said. Lila lifted her glass. "That is not an invitation." His smile widened. "I like direct women. I am not trying to be liked." He laughed as if she had flirted. "What is your name? No. That is unusual. It is the only answer you are getting." His eyes moved over her slowly. Not admiring, measuring. Lila shifted her chair, opening space between herself and the wall. The service exit remained clear. He noticed and placed one hand on the back of her chair. The gesture looked casual. It was not. "You do not have to be nervous." "I am not nervous." "Then stop looking at the door." Lila turned her eyes to him. "Move your hand." A second voice entered from behind him. "She is not interested." The man froze. The stranger standing there wore a charcoal suit with no tie, dark hair, broad shoulders, reins still faintly visible at the edges of his collar. He did not look angry. That made him more dangerous. The man in linen straightened. "Do I know you?" The stranger looked at the hand gripping Lila's chair. "Move it." Nothing in his voice rose. The man removed his hand. "We were talking." "No," the stranger said. "You were waiting for her refusal to become inconvenient." The man glanced toward the bar. 2 men near the back had already turned toward him. They were not club security. Their suits fit too well. Their posture was too still. He stepped away. The stranger moved Maya's empty chair aside rather than sitting. "You could have let me handle that," Lila said. "You would have. Then why interfere?" He glanced at the service exit she had been watching. "Because you should not have to break someone's wrist to finish a drink." Lila studied him. "Do I look like someone who breaks wrists? You look like someone who calculates exactly how much force a situation requires." The answer landed too close. He signaled for bourbon. The bartender placed a glass in front of him without asking for payment. Lila noticed. "You come here often?" "Sometimes." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have tonight." Her mouth almost moved into a smile. "Almost. I am Lila." His eyes returned to her. There was a brief pause, as though names had consequences he preferred to measure. "Dean. Just Dean. For now. Do you always answer questions like you are being deposed? Do you always ask them like you already know someone is lying?" Her fingers tightened around the glass. Maya returned then, slowing when she saw him. Lila stood. "Thank you." Dean gave a slight nod and walked toward a table near the rear of the club. The crowd shifted around him. No one entered his path. When he sat, one of the men leaned close and spoke into his ear. Dean's eyes remained on Lila. Maya followed her gaze. "That is not a normal man. I had not noticed." "Who is he, Dean?" Dean, what apparently surnames require a security clearance. Maya looked toward the rear table. That man either owns half the city or knows where the other half buried its bodies. Lila finished her drink. You say that like those are different professions. They left shortly before midnight. A black sedan waited across the street. Lila noticed it immediately. Same one Maya asked. No. Different rear window. They walked to Maya's car without changing pace. The sedan remained parked. No headlights, no movement. The following afternoon, Lila left the house alone for a job interview near the river. The hiring manager liked her experience and disliked the gaps in her work history. She left with a polite promise that they would be in touch. Outside, clouds pressed low over the city. She walked toward the river, needing distance from screens and rooms where strangers examined her future. A gray sedan passed at the corner, cracked right tail light. 5 minutes later, the same car moved slowly beside Jackson Square. Lila stopped at a shop window and pretended to study silver jewelry. The sedan continued. 2 blocks later, she saw it again. Her pulse remained even. Fear was information. Panic was what happened when information arrived faster than thought. She considered returning to Maya's house. No. If the car followed, she would lead them directly there. Lila crossed toward the ferry terminal. The Algiers Point ferry was boarding. She joined a group of tourists and office workers, keeping her face turned away from the street. At the gate, she looked back. The gray sedan had stopped near the curb. 2 men stepped out. One lifted a phone. Lila boarded. The ferry pulled away as the men reached the gate. For the first time that day, she breathed. The river spread wide and brown beneath the afternoon sky. Wind moved through her hair. A little boy in a red cap pressed both hands to the railing while his mother called him back. 200 yards away, a black speedboat moved parallel to the ferry. Dean stood at its helm. One of his men lowered binoculars. They missed the boat. Dean looked toward the terminal. Get their faces. His phone vibrated. 1 Hartwell contractor. 1 Kane affiliate. Dean read the message twice. The names should not have belonged in the same operation. Move closer, he said. The explosion came from below deck. A heavy sound contained for half a second, then violent enough to throw people against the railings. Windows burst outward. Smoke climbed through the rear stairwell. The ferry's engine died. Lila hit the floor hard. Pain flashed through one shoulder. Somewhere nearby, a child cried. The boy in the red cap stood alone beside an overturned bench. Lila pushed herself up and reached him. Where is your mother? He pointed through the smoke. Another impact rolled through the ferry. Lila grabbed a life vest and pulled it over his head. Stay low. Hold the rail. Do not let go until someone takes you. What about my mom? I am going to find her. A crew member appeared and took the child. Lila turned toward the stairs. A wave struck the drifting ferry. The deck tilted. Her shoe slipped on broken glass. Another passenger collided with her from behind. For one suspended second, Lila saw the river below. Then she fell. The water closed over her head. Cold erased the heat from her body. The current twisted her sideways. Her shoulders struck the hull. She kicked upward, but her coat caught on something beneath the surface. She pulled. The fabric held. Air burned in her chest. A cable had wrapped through the lining of her coat. The river dragged at her legs. A shape entered the water above her. An arm reached past her shoulder. A blade flashed. The fabric tore free. A hand locked around her wrist and pulled. Lila broke the surface, coughing. Breathe. She knew the voice. Dean held her against the side of a black speedboat while another man helped lift her aboard. Lila collapsed onto the deck. Water poured from her clothes. Dean climbed in after her and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You have an unusual way of ending conversations," he said. She coughed and looked at him. "You have an unusual way of appearing wherever I nearly die." His hand moved to the back of her neck, steady and warm. "Can you breathe?" "Yes." That was not convincing. "I am alive enough to resent your tone." Something almost human passed through his expression. "Good." Lila looked toward the ferry. Rescue boats were closing in. "What happened?" "An explosion. I noticed. It was placed near the engine compartment." She stared at him. "You know that already." His eyes held hers. "I know it was not an accident." The rain thickened. "What were you doing out here boating?" "That is suspiciously convenient. Most rescues look that way from the rescued person's side." She studied the black boat, the emergency radio, and the two men who watched Dean before making decisions. "Who are you?" "Someone who knew the ferry was not safe." "Before or after it exploded?" He said nothing. The boat turned toward the dock. Maya was waiting behind the emergency barricade, pale with fury and fear. She pushed past a police officer and reached Lila before the boat had fully stopped. "Oh my God." "I am fine. You fell into the Mississippi. I noticed that too." Maya wrapped both arms around her. Over Maya's shoulder, Lila watched Dean step onto the dock. A police captain approached him. "Mr. Vale." Dean spoke quietly. The captain listened. Lila saw the exchange. "Mr. Vale." The name meant nothing yet, but the respect did. Dean turned toward her. "Dinner tomorrow. That is not an explanation." "No. You expect me to have dinner with a man who followed me onto a ferry. I expect you to choose a public place. And if I say no, then I leave you alone." The answer came without pressure. That made it harder. Lila looked at Maya. Maya's expression said absolutely not. Lila looked back at Dean. "Public place. You choose the table." He walked away before she could change her mind. That night, inside a private room above the river, Dominic Vale studied two photographs placed beside one another. One man worked for Conrad Hartwell, the other worked for Gabriel Kane. Owen stood across the table. "This does not make sense," he said. Dominic looked toward the rain moving against the window. "It makes sense to someone." He picked up his phone. "Move the jet closer. Are you bringing her to Seattle?" Dominic's gaze returned to the photograph of Lila standing beneath the club lights watching the exit even while she smiled. "Not unless I have no other choice." Outside Maya's house, Lila sat awake at the kitchen table with Dean Vale's name written on a sheet of paper. She opened her laptop. The search field waited. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Then she typed. The search results appeared one after another. Vale Maritime Holdings, Vale Protective Services, Vale Development Group. The name belonged to a private empire stretching from Seattle to Vancouver, built on cargo terminals, commercial security real estate, and contracts large enough to shape entire neighborhoods. Lila scrolled slowly. Most of the photographs showed boardrooms, charity dinners, ribbon cuttings, and men in dark suits standing beside politicians. None showed Dean. She searched again. Dean Vale, New Orleans. Nothing. Dean Vale, shipping. Nothing useful. She leaned closer to the screen. The absence bothered her more than a criminal record would have. People with money left traces. Properties, donations, lawsuits, photographs beside giant checks. Even men who guarded their privacy appeared somewhere if they moved through the world under their real names. Dean Vale existed only in the words he had given her. Maya entered the kitchen carrying 2 mugs. "You are researching the Riverman. I am checking whether he exists. That sounds healthier." Lila turned the laptop toward her. "There is no Dean Vale connected to any of these companies." Maya read the screen. "Maybe he is related to the family. Then there would still be something. Maybe he uses another name professionally. That is not comforting. No. But he did pull you out of the Mississippi. Lila closed the search window. Saving someone does not make every lie harmless. Maya sat across from her. You are still going to dinner. I said I would. You can change your mind. Lila looked toward the dark window. She had changed her mind about men before, usually after they revealed what they wanted from her. Dean had not asked for anything. That should have made him easier to refuse. Instead, it made her curious. The next evening, Lila chose a restaurant in the Marini with 12 tables, 2 visible exits, and a kitchen door that opened onto a narrow courtyard. She arrived early. Dean was already waiting outside. He wore a black jacket over a white shirt open at the collar. No tie, no visible weapon, no men standing nearby. Lila knew that did not mean they were absent. His gaze moved over her once careful and brief. You came. You sound surprised. I was prepared for you not to. He opened the door. Lila did not move. Do not do that. His hand dropped from the handle. Do what act like you are certain I will walk where you want me to. Something shifted in his expression. He stepped away from the entrance. Lila opened the door herself. Inside, she chose a table near the rear wall. Dean sat where she pointed. The server greeted him by name, then corrected himself so quickly Lila almost missed it. Good evening, Mr. V. Dean looked up. The server stopped. Dean, he finished. Lila waited until the man walked away. That was subtle. Dean unfolded his napkin. He knows my family. Which part of your family? The part that pays him. You are very comfortable giving answers that create larger questions, and you are comfortable asking questions you do not want answered. Lila studied him. You do not know what I want. No, he said. I know what you fear. The candle between them moved when the front door opened. Lila's fingers tightened beneath the table. Dean saw it. He did not turn toward the door. He looked at the reflection in the window behind her instead. A couple entered. No threat. Lila relaxed by a fraction. You do that too, she said. What use reflections? Dean took a drink of water. They are useful. You looked at the window before you looked at the people. So did you. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lila said, What do you do? My family owns shipping companies. What kind of shipping? Freight, port logistics, security. That sounds broad. It is. That sounds expensive. It can be. It sounds like you are leaving things out. His eyes held hers. I am. The honesty surprised her. Not because it was complete, because it was not dressed as anything else. The server brought wine. Lila covered her glass with 2 fingers. Water. Dean nodded to the server. No question. No persuasion. When they were alone again, he asked cybersecurity. She looked at him. Maya talks. She said enough to explain why you looked at the club camera before you looked at the band. Lila leaned back. I design security architecture. For banks. Sometimes. Health systems. Private companies. Anyone with something valuable and a weak understanding of how people behave. Dean's mouth shifted. People are always the breach. Exactly. He said it without hesitation. Lila watched him more carefully. Most people think security is about stronger walls. It is about knowing who holds the key. That answer sounds practiced. It is experienced. The food arrived. For several minutes they spoke about harmless things. The heat, the river, the way tourists treated New Orleans as if music had been invented for their vacation. Dean told her he hated crowded parties. Lila did not believe him. You move through rooms like people are trained to make space for you. They usually are. There it is. What? The truth trying to escape. He looked almost amused. She asked where he lived. Seattle. For how long? Most of my life. Why New Orleans business? What business? The kind that keeps me here longer than expected. She knew the answer was about her. She did not know how. Dean lifted his glass. What about you? What about me? Why New Orleans? I like the weather. You hate humidity. You have known me for 2 conversations. You keep your hair tied back whenever the air gets heavy. Lila paused. And you notice too much. I have been told. By women. By enemies. The word sat between them. He did not smile after saying it. Lila set down her fork. My family is complicated. Dean's expression changed slightly. Complicated how you just told me not to ask about yours. I did not tell you that. You avoided every answer. That is different. Only from your side. He accepted that. Lila looked at the candle. My father believes love is obedience with a softer name. Dean said nothing. She continued because silence was easier than sympathy. When I was 14, my mother sent me to boarding school. Everyone said it was for the education. Years later, I realized she was trying to put distance between me and him. Did it work? For a while. What happened to her? Lila's throat tightened. She died. Dean's gaze lowered. I am sorry. Most people asked how. He did not. That restraint loosened something inside her. She left me money, Lila said. Enough to leave if I ever needed to. You needed to. Yes. Dean looked toward the window. Does your father know where you are? I do not know. Does he know who you are? With Lila gave a humorless smile. I barely know who I am with. He returned his attention to her. You are with a man who will not tell your father where you are. Why should I believe that? Because if I intended to return you, you would not still be sitting here. The words were quiet, too certain. A chill moved along her arms. Is that meant to reassure me? No. At least you are honest about that. Sometimes. She should have stood. Instead, she stayed through dessert. Outside, rain had begun again. It fell in warm, heavy drops, turning the street into a sheet of reflected light. Dean offered to drive her home. Lila refused. My car is 3 blocks away. I will walk you. I did not ask. No. She looked at him. He lifted one hand. Then walk alone. He stepped back beneath the restaurant awning. Lila started down the sidewalk. After half a block, she looked behind her. Dean had not followed. He remained where she left him, watching the street rather than her. The choice should have made her feel safer. It made her want him closer. She stopped. He waited. Your car, she said. Where is it? A black SUV pulled to the curb from a side street. Lila stared at him. You had a driver waiting. Yes. And you were going to let me walk in the rain. You told me not to follow you. She opened the rear door herself. Do not sound proud of doing the minimum. Dean got in beside her. I am learning. The vehicle moved through the city. Lila gave the driver an address 2 blocks from Maya's house. Dean did not correct her. When the SUV stopped, she reached for the door. Lila. She turned. Dean's expression had gone still. If you see the gray sedan again, do not go home. Her hand remained on the handle. You knew about it? Yes. How I had someone watching the men inside. Not me. He paused. The pause was enough. Lila opened the door. Good night, Dean. He caught the edge of the door before she closed it. I was watching for threats around you. You were watching me. Yes. The simple admission angered her more than denial. Do not follow me again. If I believe you are in danger, no. Her voice cut through his. Dean stopped. Lila leaned closer. You do not get to finish that sentence. Not with me. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Then he released the door. Lila stepped into the rain. She walked the remaining blocks without looking back. The SUV did not move until she entered Maya's house. Inside, Maya stood at the window. You came home in a car worth more than this building. Do not. How was dinner? He admitted he was watching me. Maya turned. That is not romantic. I know. Do you... Lila removed her wet coat. I told him to stop. And will he? Lila looked toward the street. I do not know. Her phone vibrated. A message from Dean. No excuses, no defense. I heard you. Lila read it twice, then deleted it. She did not block the number. The following morning, Maya found a sealed envelope beneath the front door. Inside was a photograph of the gray sedan and 2 printed profiles. One man had worked private security for Conrad Hartwell. The other had a history of arrests connected to Gabriel Kane. Lila read the second name slowly. She had heard it years earlier through the closed door of her father's study. Gabriel Kane. Her father had not sounded afraid often. He had sounded afraid then. At the bottom of the page, Dean had written one sentence. They are working together. Maya looked over her shoulder. Who is Gabriel Kane? A man my father once called a disease with a bank account. That sounds unpleasant. It means this is not only about bringing me home. Lila stared at the photograph. Call him, Maya said. No, he knows more than we do. He also had this delivered without knocking. That might be his version of respecting your boundary. It is a disturbing version. Maya folded her arms. You are still going to call him. Lila waited until evening. Dean answered on the first ring. Where did you get the profiles? From people I trust. Who are they? Men connected to your father and Kane. I can read. Silence. Lila pressed the phone closer. What do they want? I do not know yet. Why were they following me? I do not know. Why were you following me? His answer came after a beat. Because Conrad Hartwell offered you to my family. The kitchen seemed to tilt. Maya looked up from across the room. Lila's voice dropped. What did you say? Dean exhaled. Not over the phone. You do not get to choose the room for this conversation. Lila, my father offered me to your family how he proposed an alliance. A marriage. Yes. Her pulse began to climb. Who, Dean said nothing. Lila stood so quickly the chair struck the wall. Who was I supposed to marry? A knock sounded at the front door. Maya froze. Lila stared toward the hallway. Dean's voice came through the phone. Do not open it. Another knock. Slow. Measured. Lila crossed to the security monitor. Dean stood on the porch alone. Rain darkened his jacket. She opened the inner door but kept the chain fastened. You knew. Yes. Who is the man? Dean looked at her through the narrow opening. Let me in. No. Then come outside. No. Maya moved into the hallway holding the smoke bomb. Dean noticed. You do own one. This is not the moment, Lila said. His gaze returned to hers. There are things I need to explain. Start with the name. A car engine growled at the end of the block. Dean turned his head. The gray sedan swung around the corner too fast. Its rear window lowered. Dean's body changed instantly. Down. Gunfire shattered the porch light. Lila dropped behind the door as bullets tore through the wood. Maya pulled the smoke bomb pin and threw it through the broken window. White smoke filled the porch. Dean fired twice toward the street. A black SUV slammed into the gray sedan from the side. Men poured out. The shooting stopped almost as quickly as it began. Dean pushed through the damaged door. Lila backed away. He seized her shoulders, scanning her face and body. "Are you hit?" "No." "Maya." "I am fine," Maya said. Dean looked toward the hallway. "We are leaving." Lila pulled free. "No. They know this address, because your people led them here. My people did not fire into the house." "You do not know that?" His jaw tightened. "I know every man outside. That is not reassuring." Another vehicle approached. Dean reached for her. Lila stepped back. "Do not touch me." He stopped. The effort showed. "Lila, listen to me. Kane's men and your father's men are working together. This house is compromised. You cannot stay. I will choose where I go. You have 30 seconds before this street fills with police your father may control." Maya looked through the smoke. "He is right about that." Lila turned on her. "I know." She hated that she knew. Dean lowered his voice. "There is a secure house near the lake. One night. You keep your phone. Maya comes with us. No one enters your room. You decide in the morning." Lila studied him. "You swear?" "Yes." "On what?" His face went still. "On the part of me you have not learned to hate yet." It was a strange answer, too honest to sound rehearsed. Lila grabbed her backpack. The safe house sat on the edge of Lake Pontchartrain behind cypress trees and a steel gate. The long drive gave Lila time to count 3 vehicles in the convoy and 6 armed men. Maya sat beside her in the rear seat. Dean sat in front. He did not turn around. Inside the house, full wall windows faced the dark water. The rooms were spare and quiet. Cedar, stone, low lights. Dean showed Maya a guest room at one end of the hall. Lila's room stood at the other. He gave her the key. Only 1 copy. She tested the lock. "You will stay outside. I will stay in the living room. And your men. Perimeter only." Lila held the key. "You have practiced this. Keeping people alive. Making captivity feel polite." Dean looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked away. Lila closed the door. She remained inside for 20 minutes. Then she opened it again. Dean sat alone on the terrace beyond the glass wall. A bottle of bourbon stood beside him. Only 1 glass. Lila stepped outside. He did not turn. "You should sleep," he said. "You should answer my question." He poured nothing. The lake moved black and silver beneath the wind. Lila sat at the opposite end of the outdoor sofa. "Who did my father choose?" Dean looked toward the water. Someone he thought would strengthen his position. "That is not a name." "No." She rose. His hand closed around the bourbon glass. "Dominic Vale." Lila stopped. The name pulled something cold through her. She knew it. Everyone in her father's world knew it. The Vale heir who had taken control after his father's death. The man who ended a port war in 48 hours. The man whose companies controlled enough private security to make police departments nervous. "Dominic Vale," she repeated. "Yes. And where is he?" Dean lifted his eyes to hers. "Seattle." Something about the answer unsettled her. She sat again. Did he agree? Not at first. What changed Dean's gaze moved over her face. "He saw your photograph." Lila laughed once. There was no humor in it. "My father sent him a photograph like a catalog." "No." "How is that different? You were running at the photograph." She looked at him. Dean continued. "He knew you had not agreed, and that made him want me. It made him ask questions. What kind? Why your father lied? Why Kane's people were looking for you. Why a woman with your resources ran with one suitcase. Lila felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. Did Dominic send you? Dean's silence lasted half a second too long. She saw it. The room shifted around them. Who are you? He stood slowly. Lila. No. She backed away. Do not use my name like that. Tell me who you are. A phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit. Vale aircraft ready. Seattle route secured. Beneath the notification was a photograph. Lila beneath the gas station lights. Her suitcase beside her. Her hand around the disposable phone. A file label sat above the image. Lila Hartwell. Proposed Vale alliance. She looked from the screen to Dean. His face had changed, not into a stranger, into the truth. What is your full name? He did not look away. Dominic Dean Vale. The lake wind moved through the terrace. Lila heard nothing except her own breathing. You knew who I was at the club? Yes. On the ferry? Yes. When you sat across from me at dinner? Yes. When you kissed me? He said nothing. The silence was worse. Lila stepped back. Every gentle moment rearranged itself inside her. The chair he moved without sitting. The questions he did not ask. The space he gave her. The message claiming he had heard her. All of it now carried another meaning. You knew I was running from you. You were running from a decision your father made. Your name was on that decision. I had not agreed to marry you, but you came to inspect me. His jaw tightened. I came to know you. You came under another name. Dean is my name. Do not insult me with technical honesty. Dominic took one step closer. Lila raised a hand. He stopped. I was not a woman to you, she said. I was research. That changed. Before the ferry, her eyes burned. Then you had more time to tell me. He had no answer. Lila reached for her phone on the table. Dominic moved at the same time. His hand closed around her wrist. Not hard. Not painful. Still a restraint. She looked down at his fingers. Dominic released her immediately. The damage remained. I am leaving. No. The word came quietly. Absolute. Lila stared at him. Dominic heard himself too late. You promised I could decide in the morning. The situation changed. No, the truth arrived. Kane knows where you are, because you brought me here. This property is secure, then unlock the gate. Dominic's expression hardened. I cannot do that. Cannot or will not, both. Lila picked up her phone. Dominic took it from her hand. The movement was clean and fast. For a second, she could not breathe. Give it back. They can use it to locate you. Give it back. When we are airborne. Her face went cold. You already prepared the plane. Yes. Before I agreed. Yes. Maya appeared in the doorway behind them. What is happening? Lila looked at her. Dean is Dominic Vale. Maya went still. Dominic did not deny it. Lila pointed toward the phone in his hand. He is taking us to Seattle. I am taking both of you somewhere Kane cannot reach. Maya looked at Lila. Do you want to go? No. Dominic's jaw shifted. Maya turned to him. Then she is not going. A shot cracked from beyond the trees. The terrace glass exploded. Dominic threw Lila to the ground and covered her with his body. Gunfire rolled across the property. His security team answered from the perimeter. Maya crawled behind the stone wall. Dominic pressed one hand to Lila's head. Stay down. She felt the weight of him, the heat of him, the certainty of his control. A bullet struck the railing. Metal screamed. Dominic drew a weapon and fired toward the trees. Men shouted inside the house. Another window shattered. A guard appeared at the terrace door. East wall breach. How many? At least 5. Hartwell insignia on one vehicle, Kane weapons on the ground team. Dominic looked down at Lila. You can hate me in Seattle. She pushed against his chest. I can hate you here. A second explosion shook the house. The lights died. Dominic pulled her to her feet. We are leaving now. Lila saw blood on his shoulder. A shard of glass had cut through his shirt. You are hurt. It is nothing. He moved her toward the interior hallway. She resisted. Dominic turned. If the choice is your anger or your funeral, I will survive your anger. Lila's eyes locked on his. That is what men say when they want obedience to sound noble. The words struck him. For one moment he looked less like Dominic Vale and more like the man she had known beside the lake. Then another burst of gunfire hit the outer wall. The moment closed. He guided Maya and Lila through a reinforced passage beneath the house. At the far end, an armored vehicle waited with the engine running. Lila stopped beside the open door. My things already collected. She looked at him slowly. From Maya's house, my people packed them. You entered her home. We did not have time to wait. You touched everything I own while I was sleeping. I made sure it stayed within reach. No. You put it within yours. Dominic's face remained controlled, but pain moved behind his eyes. Lila climbed into the vehicle before he could touch her again. Maya sat beside her. Dominic entered last. The doors locked. No one spoke as the convoy moved through the dark. At the private terminal, a jet waited beneath white floodlights. Lila stepped onto the tarmac. Dominic remained close without touching her. She reached for the disposable phone hidden in her coat. His hand closed around hers. She looked at him. Do not. His grip loosened, but he still took the phone. I need to know who you call. You need to know everything. Right now, yes. She stared at him. You are worse than my father. Dominic's expression did not change. His eyes did. I hope you do not believe that. I hope you remember I said it. Inside the jet, Lila walked past the wide leather seats and sat alone near the back. Maya sat across the aisle. Dominic remained standing. If you need anything, ask the crew. Lila looked out the window. Lila. She turned toward him. Dean is dead. Do not use his voice with me. His jaw tightened. He walked to the front of the cabin and sat down. The jet began to move. New Orleans slid past the window in wet lights and blurred reflections. Lila watched until the city disappeared beneath the clouds. Only then did she close her eyes. She could still feel the place where Dominic had held her wrist. She could still remember the way Dean had stopped kissing her when she looked uncertain. The most dangerous part was not that one of them had been false. It was that both men had been real. The clouds beneath the jet looked solid enough to walk across. Lila kept her face turned toward the window, though there was nothing to see except white emptiness and the faint reflection of the man seated at the front of the cabin. Dominic had not approached her again. He spoke once to the pilot and twice to someone on a secured phone. His voice remained low, controlled, stripped of every trace of Dean. Maya sat across the aisle with her arms folded. She had asked Lila 3 times whether she was all right. Lila had lied 3 times. The place where Dominic had held her wrist no longer hurt. That made it worse. Bruises would have given the anger somewhere visible to live. Instead, the betrayal remained beneath the skin. A flight attendant placed water on the table beside her. Lila did not touch it. 20 minutes later, thirst overcame pride. She drank all of it. At the front of the cabin, Dominic watched the reflection in the dark window and said nothing. The jet landed outside Seattle beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. Rain crossed the runway in silver sheets. Black vehicles waited near a private hangar, their engines running. Men in dark coats stood beside them with their attention divided between the aircraft, the surrounding buildings, and the road beyond the fence. Lila descended the stairs slowly. The air was colder than New Orleans. It smelled of fuel-wet concrete and salt from Puget Sound. Dominic stepped onto the tarmac behind her. He did not reach for her arm. That restraint felt almost insulting now. Maya moved to Lila's side. "Where are we going?" Dominic answered without looking away from the vehicles. "My family's estate." Lila gave a quiet laugh. "Of course you have an estate." He turned toward her. "You will be able to rest there. Is that what you call it when the gates lock from the outside?" His face remained still, but the men around them heard her. Lila saw it in the way their eyes moved and then quickly moved away. Dominic opened the rear door of the first vehicle. She ignored it and entered the second. Maya followed. For a moment, Dominic stood in the rain. Then he got into the front vehicle, and the convoy pulled away. Seattle appeared through wet glass in fragments, steel bridges, water between buildings, ferries moving like pale shapes across the bay. The city looked clean and distant, as if it had been constructed from stone rain and people who did not ask unnecessary questions. They left the center of the city and climbed through neighborhoods lined with cedar trees and walls of dark glass. The Vale estate stood beyond two sets of gates. The first opened after a camera scanned every vehicle. The second was made of black iron and thick enough to stop more than trespassers. Beyond it, a long drive curved through ancient trees toward a house built on a rise above the Sound. The house was not ornate. That would have been easier to dislike. It was all gray stone, dark timber, and enormous windows facing the water. Warm light glowed inside. Security cameras disappeared into the architecture. Men moved along the perimeter with the quiet precision of a private army. The vehicle stopped beneath a covered entrance. Lila stepped out before anyone could open her door. The front doors opened. A woman in her early 60s stood beneath the light. Her dark hair was threaded with silver and pulled into a loose knot. She wore a simple cream blouse and dark trousers. No diamonds. No performance. Her eyes went first to Dominic's vehicle, then to Lila. Something softened in her expression. She walked forward but stopped several feet away. "Lila." Lila stiffened. The woman noticed. "I am Teresa Vale," she said. "Dominic's mother, Mrs. Vale." "Teresa, if you decide you can tolerate it." Maya stepped out beside Lila. Teresa turned to her. "You must be Maya." Maya looked toward the guards. "I am deciding whether to be impressed or terrified. That is a reasonable response to this house." Dominic approached from behind them. Blood had dried along his shoulder where the glass had cut him. Teresa saw it immediately. "You are hurt. It is nothing. Men in this family have called many foolish things nothing." Dominic glanced at Lila. She looked away. A second woman appeared inside the doorway. She was younger, perhaps 30, with dark hair cut at her jaw and a phone held loosely in one hand. Her eyes moved over Lila with direct interest. "So, this is her." Dominic's expression hardened. "Paige. What I did not say, runaway bride." "You were thinking it loudly," Teresa said. Paige looked at Maya. "And you brought a witness." Maya stepped onto the porch. "I prefer the term hostile observer." Paige smiled. "I like her." Lila entered the house because standing in the rain had begun to feel like another kind of defeat. The foyer rose 2 stories above them. A stone staircase curved along one wall. Through the windows, dark water stretched toward the horizon. The beauty of the place did not make it less guarded. It only made the cage expensive. A staff member carried Lila's suitcase toward the stairs. She turned sharply. "Do not touch that." The man stopped. Dominic spoke from behind her. "Leave it." The suitcase was placed beside the wall. Lila took the handle herself. Teresa watched the exchange. No one spoke until they reached the second floor. The bedroom prepared for Lila looked over the Sound. Pale walls, A fireplace. A sitting area near the windows. Fresh clothes hung inside the wardrobe beside the things taken from Maya's house. Someone had folded her underwear. Someone had placed her mother's silver key on the bedside table. Lila's hand tightened around the suitcase handle. Maya stepped into the room and closed the wardrobe. "I can stay here," she said. A man in a suit appeared at the door. "Ms. Brooks has a room in the East Wing." Lila looked at Dominic. "Maya stays with me." The guard waited for Dominic's answer. Dominic did not look at him. "She stays here." The guard nodded and left. Lila crossed the room. A second door stood beside the fireplace. She opened it. Dominic's bedroom waited on the other side. She tested the lock. It turned only from his room. Lila looked back at him. Convenient. Dominic's gaze moved to the lock. "I did not choose the room, but you knew it was beside yours." "Yes." "Does every woman you abduct receive connecting access?" Paige made a small sound from the hallway. Teresa gave her a warning look. Dominic stepped through the connecting doorway. He examined the lock once, then called for a member of staff. "Reverse it." The man arrived with tools. Dominic remained while the lock was removed and placed on Lila's side. When the work was finished, he returned to his room. Lila closed the door between them. She turned the lock. The click was small. Still, it was the first decision she had made since leaving New Orleans that no one could immediately undo. Dinner was served in a room too large for the 5 people seated inside it. Teresa sat at one end of the table. Paige sat across from Maya. Dominic took the chair beside Lila. She moved to the next one. No one commented. For several minutes only silverware touched china. Then Teresa placed down her fork. "Dominic tells me there was an attack." "Dominic tells people many things," Lila said. His jaw tightened. Teresa did not look away from her. "Were you injured?" "No." "Were you brought here against your will?" The room became still. Dominic looked at his mother. Lila answered before he could. "Yes." Teresa closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked at her son. "You said she agreed to leave the house. She agreed before the second attack." "That is not what I asked." Dominic rested both hands on the table. "The property was compromised. So you removed her ability to choose. I kept her alive." Lila looked at him. "There it is again." Paige leaned back in her chair. Dominic turned toward Lila. "What would you have had me do? Tell me the truth before men began shooting. I did not know the full threat. You knew my father offered me to you. You knew Kane's people were following me. You knew enough to board a plane." Dominic's voice lowered. "Incomplete information creates panic." "No," Lila said. "Hidden information creates dependence." The words settled over the table. Teresa looked down. Paige stopped smiling. Dominic did not answer. Lila pushed back her chair. "I am not hungry." "You should eat," he said. Her eyes moved to his. He heard the command after it left him. The room waited. Dominic released a slow breath. "Food will be available if you want it later." Lila stood. "That is better." She left with Maya beside her. Behind them, Teresa spoke quietly. "She is not one of your employees." "I know." "No," Teresa said. "You understand the sentence. That is not the same thing." Lila did not sleep. She sat in the chair near the window while Maya lay across the bed in borrowed clothes. The rain stopped before midnight. Moonlight touched the water beyond the glass. Maya opened one eye. "You are staring at his house like you plan to hack the walls." "I might." "Can walls be hacked?" "Anything connected to a network can be hacked." That sounded threatening. It was comforting. Maya sat up. "What are we doing?" Lila knew what she meant. "Not tonight. Not the house. Everything." I do not know. You could leave. The gates are guarded. I mean tomorrow. Demand a car. Go to a hotel. Call someone. Who? Maya had no answer. Conrad's men had attacked a residential street. Kane's men had attempted to kill her on the ferry and at the lake house. The police were uncertain. Every airport could be watched. Dominic's fortress might be the safest place available. That did not make it freedom. Maya moved closer. You can be safer here and still hate how he brought you. Lila looked down at the silver key in her hand. My mother spent years teaching me not to confuse survival with permission. What would she tell you now to keep something no man knows about? Lila looked toward the connecting door. Then that is what I'm going to do. The following morning she woke to voices in the corridor. Men moved past the bedroom carrying equipment cases. Through the window, workers raised white structures in the lower garden. Long tables arrived. Flowers were unloaded from a truck. Lila opened the door. Dominic stood at the far end of the hall speaking into his phone. He saw her and ended the call. What is happening outside? He approached. The engagement announcement became public last night. She stared at him. What engagement? Ours. There is no ours. The families believe there is. Correct them. It is not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You say there will be no wedding. Dominic looked toward the windows. Canceling immediately would confirm that you are unprotected and that the alliance failed. I am not a shipping contract. I know. You keep saying that while arranging my life like one. His face hardened. The wedding is scheduled in 3 days. The hallway seemed to narrow. You scheduled it. Your father did. The announcement had already been prepared. Then cancel it. Conrad Kane and every rival organization now expect us to stand in one place at one time. If we change the plan without understanding why they want that, we lose the only advantage we have. Lila stepped closer. You are considering using the wedding as bait. I am considering every possibility. With me at the center, you would be protected. She laughed once. Of course I would. Dominic's expression tightened. Nothing will happen without your knowledge. That is not the same as consent. Teresa appeared at the staircase. Dominic. He turned. She came toward them slowly. Safety is not a room when the person inside cannot open the door. Dominic looked from his mother to Lila. Something in him shifted. Not enough, but something. I will explain everything we know tonight, he said. Lila folded her arms. You will explain it now. Before he answered, a woman's voice carried from below. Dominic Vale, you have created a disaster large enough to deserve its own press office. A blonde woman crossed the foyer wearing a cream coat and carrying 2 phones. She came up the stairs with the confidence of someone who had never been stopped by a locked gate. When she reached Dominic, she looked at the blood dried near his collar. You should have called me before allowing gunfire to become public information. She touched his tie, though he was not wearing one, then adjusted his collar instead. The familiarity landed in Lila's chest before she could prevent it. Dominic gently removed the woman's hand. Celeste. Celeste turned toward Lila. Her gaze was intelligent, direct, and far too observant. You must be Lila Hartwell. Lila gave her nothing. And you must be someone who enters armed compounds without introducing herself. Celeste Rowan, political consultant. Legal strategist when the lawyers become frightened. Longtime cleaner of Vale family disasters. Page appeared below. You forgot occasional destroyer of reputations. Celeste smiled. I prefer selective correction. Dominic looked toward his study. We need to talk. Lila watched him leave with Celeste. A door closed behind them. Page leaned against the railing. Before you decide to hate her, Celeste is not sleeping with my brother. Lila turned. I did not ask. No, your face did. Maya covered a smile. Lila looked toward the study. What is she doing here, keeping our public allies calm? Making sure no one sells photographs to the press? Convincing politicians they did not attend dinners with criminals? That sounds full-time. In this family it is. Paige's expression changed. Celeste helped Dominic after our father died. Federal agents were circling. Half the men in the company expected him to fail. She kept the business from becoming evidence. So she knows where the bodies are. Paige considered that. She knows which records describe them. 2 hours later, Dominic entered the breakfast room during a phone call. Lila sat with Teresa and Maya. Paige stood near the windows reading messages. Dominic's voice was low. Keep Kane away from the estate. Nothing near the house. Nothing near her. Lila's hand stopped around her coffee cup. Gabriel Kane. The name pulled an old memory from behind a locked door. Her father in his Philadelphia study. A glass breaking. A voice saying Kane did not forgive debt. Dominic ended the call. Lila looked at him. What does Kane want? His expression closed. We are confirming that. That was not my question. He wants access to our shipping routes. Through my father. Possibly. Why were their men working together? We do not know. You know something. Dominic remained silent. Lila placed the cup down carefully. You keep waiting for certainty before telling me that my life is in danger. I will not frighten you with guesses. You are not protecting me from fear. You are protecting yourself from my reaction. His eyes sharpened. That is not true. Then tell me everything. He looked toward Teresa. She did not rescue him. Dominic pulled out a chair. Your father invested in port expansion along the Gulf Coast. The project failed. Kane financed part of it through shell companies. How much? At least $30 million. Maya whistled softly. Lila ignored her. And the marriage would connect Hartwell distribution to Vale shipping. That is the public benefit. Yes. What is the private one? Dominic looked at her. Your father may have offered Kane future access to our routes after the alliance. May have. We do not have proof. What happens if you marry me? Conrad receives protection under the Vale name. His creditors become cautious. Kane loses leverage. And if you die. Silence answered first. Paige lowered her phone. Dominic spoke quietly. Control of several companies could become vulnerable during succession. Lila felt cold despite the fire. And me. You would be my legal widow. The room changed around her. A widow with access. A widow who could be pressured. A widow who had spent her life being told which papers to sign. Maya leaned forward. Someone designed this marriage to make her useful whether Dominic lives or dies. No one disagreed. Lila stood. I am going to see Maya's hotel. Dominic rose with her. No. She turned slowly. There was the word again. Clean. Automatic. His expression changed as he heard it. Lila picked up her bag. Move. He stood between her and the doorway. The room went silent. Lila looked at him. Do not use that voice with me. I am tired of men lowering their tone and expecting the world to obey. His shoulders remained rigid. For several seconds neither moved. Then something in Dominic fought itself. She saw it in his hands, in the set of his jaw, in the breath he took before stepping aside. I will have a car take you. I will call one. I am not bending that far. Lila almost laughed. It was not freedom. It was an argument in which he had moved at all. One driver, she said. No one enters the hotel. One driver. No tracking my phone. His pause was small. Lila noticed. Dominic reached into his jacket and removed a black phone. Take this instead. What is it encrypted? It calls only me. Is it tracked? He did not answer quickly enough. She gave him a humorless smile. At least you are consistent. He placed the phone on the table. Lila left it there. Maya's hotel suite overlooked downtown Seattle. The windows were wide. The carpet was too soft. Fresh flowers stood on the table beside a bowl of fruit no one had ordered. Maya entered first and checked the bedroom. Lila examined the smoke detector, the television, and the wireless access point. No cameras, she said. That is romantic. It is the minimum. They sat near the window. Maya opened her laptop. All right, tell me everything we know. They built the picture slowly. Conrad owed Kane money. Kane wanted Pacific access. Dominic's marriage would place both families inside one public alliance. If Dominic died after the ceremony, Conrad could use Lila's legal position to influence the transfer of assets. The wedding provided a predictable time, a predictable location, and a room filled with powerful witnesses whose panic would create cover. Maya stared at the screen. You need to know what your father promised. Yes. How Lila looked at her. Maya closed her eyes. No. I did not say anything. You made the face. What face? The face you make before committing a felony with excellent posture. Lila reached for her phone. We go to Philadelphia. Dominic will stop us. That is why we do not tell him. Maya leaned back. This is dangerous. So is waiting for powerful men to decide what information I deserve. They booked a private flight using Dominic's black card. Lila did not feel guilty. By the time the car returned to the Vale estate, she had packed only what she could carry. Dominic was in his study with Celeste and Paige. Lila sent him a message after the plane left the runway. I am going home. His call came before they crossed the mountains. She answered. His voice was too calm. Where are you? In the air. Turn the plane around. No. Lila. I am going to my father's house. Silence. Then a chair moved sharply on his side of the call. You are not entering that house. I already decided. You do not know what is waiting there. Neither do you. That is the problem. I can get the information another way. Your way involves armed men and closed doors. My way keeps you alive. Your way keeps me dependent. His breathing changed. Not louder, heavier. Come back to Seattle. Lila looked through the window at the fading light. I cannot become your wife if I am still someone who can be summoned. You are not being summoned. It feels the same from this side. The silence stretched. When Dominic spoke again, the order had left his voice. Call me when you land. I will call if I choose. She ended the connection. Philadelphia received them with cold rain and a sky without color. The Hartwell mansion stood behind stone walls in the old neighborhood where Lila had learned to walk quietly. The house looked exactly as she remembered. That was the cruelest part. The same iron lanterns, the same dark windows, the same brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. Maya stood beside her on the steps. You grew up here, until I was 14, and you became functional. That remains disputed. The door opened before they knocked. Mrs. Dalton, the housekeeper who had served the family for 20 years, stared at Lila. Miss Hartwell. Hello, Mrs. Dalton. The woman's eyes moved to Maya and their bags. Your father is in the study. Of course he is. Conrad Hartwell stood behind his desk when Lila entered. He wore a dark suit and held a glass of whiskey. His surprise lasted exactly 1 second. Then it became satisfaction. Lila. She crossed the room and kissed his cheek because refusal would begin the wrong battle too soon. Father. His eyes moved to Maya. And your friend, Maya Brooks. Maya smiled. I have heard almost nothing good about you. Conrad's expression barely changed. Lila placed her bag near the sofa. We will stay tonight. Does Vale know you are here? I did not ask him. Something flickered in Conrad's eyes. Annoyance, then calculation. You are playing a dangerous game. Lila looked around the study. Same leather chairs, same portrait of her grandfather above the fireplace, same locked cabinet beside the bookshelves. You taught me the board. Conrad studied her. Then he smiled like a father receiving a difficult daughter home. Dinner at 7. I have guests later. Stay upstairs afterward. Lila lowered her eyes. Of course. The moment he left the room, Maya closed the door. I dislike him more in person. Lila crossed to the desk. That means your instincts are functioning. She opened Conrad's computer. The login screen appeared. His security had improved. Layered permissions, external storage, a biometric key for financial systems. Maya opened her laptop beside her. Can you get in? Lila touched the silver key at her throat. My mother left more than money. Years ago, Catherine Hartwell had used an old tablet to manage household accounts. Conrad never removed it from the list of trusted devices. The tablet no longer existed, but its authentication certificate remained buried in an archived backup. Lila restored it. The first barrier opened. The recovery phrase asked for the name of Conrad's first racehorse. Lila typed Belladonna. The second barrier disappeared. The local administrator password came from the lake house the family sold when Lila was 11. Conrad had built his system to keep strangers out. He had never considered that memory could become a weapon. By 5:30, Lila had access to the conferencing system in the study. She created an encrypted audio relay and routed it to Maya's phone. A small green dot appeared. Live, Lila said. A knock struck the door. Both women froze. Mrs. Dalton entered halfway. Lila shifted the screen to a bridal website. Maya leaned over the desk. I still think the silk one looks severe. It has structure. It has emotional damage. Mrs. Dalton's gaze moved between them. Mr. Hartwell asked whether you needed anything. No, thank you, Lila said. We are looking at dresses. The housekeeper's eyes lingered on the laptop. Then she left. Maya exhaled. I have never hated white fabric more. At 7:30, voices entered the study beneath them. Lila and Maya sat on the floor of her childhood bedroom. The phone lay between them. A glass touched wood. Conrad spoke first. Vale has doubled security. A second voice answered. Older, patient, almost gentle. Dominic Vale has grown sentimental. Lila's skin tightened. Gabriel Kane. Conrad laughed softly. Sentiment makes men careless. The wedding gives us one advantage he cannot remove, which is, he must stand where everyone expects him to stand. Maya moved closer. Kane continued. The glass pavilion faces the water. Cameras will fail at 11:19. His security will look toward the north gate. Our team will fire from the maintenance building. Lila stopped breathing. Conrad asked, and the exit? My men secure the lower road. Yours remove the girl. The girl has a name. Kane laughed. You still pretend that matters. My daughter will not be harmed. She will become a widow. A pause. Then Kane spoke more softly. A Vale widow connected to Hartwell blood has value. She signs the transition documents. She confirms temporary control. She tells the world the family remains stable. And after Dominic is buried, we decide where she is most useful. Conrad did not object. Lila closed her eyes. Her father had not arranged a marriage. He had arranged a murder and placed her at the center of the inheritance. Kane's voice continued. Seattle fractures. Hartwell debt disappears. I take the roots. You keep your name alive. Conrad lifted his glass. To survival. The sound of crystal meeting crystal traveled through the phone. Maya covered her mouth. Lila stood. Her legs felt steady. That frightened her more than shaking would have. I need the files. They waited until the house went quiet. At 2 a.m, Lila returned to the study. Maya guarded the door. The financial archive opened after 30 minutes. Shell companies filled the screen. False invoices, port contracts, payments routed through consulting firms. Conrad's debt to Kane appeared in coded agreements spread across 5 years. Then Lila found a folder labeled Vale. She opened it. Old shipping records, names of men Dominic had inherited from his father. Payments linked to illegal cargo. Some dated back more than a decade. Others were recent enough to damage him. Maya read over her shoulder. This could put him in prison. Yes, you can delete it. Lila looked at the file. If she erased everything, Dominic would stand beneath the pavilion while a rifle team waited across the water. If she sent everything, federal agents would take him before the ceremony. He would live. He might never forgive her. Lila removed most of the Vale records. One document remained, enough to justify detention, not enough to bury him. Maya understood. You are deciding for him. Lila's hand stopped above the keyboard. The words found the place Dominic's grip had left on her wrist. I know. You hated him for that. I know. And you are doing it anyway. Lila selected the file. I cannot watch him die. She encrypted the archive and sent it to Assistant United States Attorney Evelyn Price, whose office had investigated Kane for years. The upload completed at 4:12 in the morning. Lila closed the computer. Her hands began to shake. Maya placed a hand on her shoulder. We need to leave. They reached the staircase just before dawn. Conrad stood in the foyer below. He wore no jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled. A phone rested in his hand. The fatherly performance was gone. You were in my study. Lila stopped. Maya remained one step behind her. Conrad looked up. What did you take? Lila descended one step. What you taught me to look for. His face tightened. You foolish girl. The words no longer had the power they once carried. Lila came down another step. No, not anymore. Conrad started toward the staircase. The front doors opened behind him. Dominic entered with Paige and 2 guards. Rain darkened his coat. His eyes found Lila first. Her face, her hands, the distance between her and Conrad. Then he looked at her father. The entire foyer changed. Move away from her, Dominic said. Conrad turned. Vale. Dominic did not greet him. Conrad gave a cold smile. Take your runaway bride and leave my house. Gladly. Lila reached the final step. Dominic looked at her. Anger lived in his expression. So did fear. She stopped beside him. I know what they planned for the wedding. He went completely still. Conrad's face changed. Lila looked at her father. I know what you planned for me after Dominic was dead. Silence filled the foyer. Dominic's hand moved toward hers. He did not close his fingers. He offered. Lila looked down at his open hand. Then she placed hers inside it. Conrad saw the choice. For the first time in her life, Lila saw fear reach her father's eyes. Dominic's voice remained quiet. You will attend the ceremony. Conrad laughed. You think vows end this? No, Lila said. Evidence does. Outside, rain moved across the stone drive. Dominic opened the vehicle door for her. He did not tell her to enter. Lila stood facing him. You came for me. You called once. I hung up. The line stayed open for 3 seconds. I heard your father say my name. Lila looked away. Dominic stepped closer. What did you send enough? To whom federal prosecutors? His jaw flexed. Was I in it? Lila met his eyes. He saw the answer before she spoke. One file. His face went still. Why? Because if they take you for questioning, you are not standing beneath that glass pavilion when Kane fires. Rain gathered along his collar. You calculated that. I had to. And if I do not come back... Her throat tightened. You will be alive. Dominic looked toward the gray street. Lila's voice broke. I could not watch you die. His eyes returned to hers. But you could watch me be taken. She had no defense, only the truth. I did to you what you did to me. The anger in his face changed. Not forgiveness. Recognition. A black sedan stopped at the gate. Dominic's guards reached for their weapons. Lila's phone vibrated. A message appeared from an unknown number. Materials received. Maintain the scheduled ceremony. Do not alter the location. Do not interfere with federal action. She read it twice, then held the screen toward Dominic. He studied the message. The rain moved between them. Behind the gates stood her father's house. Ahead waited Dominic's fortress and a wedding built to become an execution. Dominic opened the vehicle door wider. This time his voice carried no command. Are you coming with me? Lila looked at his hand resting against the door, then at the road beyond him. Yes. She entered because she chose to. Dominic sat beside her without touching her. As the vehicle pulled away, the message remained bright in Lila's hand. The wedding was still happening. The message remained open on Lila's phone as the car moved through the rain. Maintain the scheduled ceremony. Do not alter the location. The front door remained open behind Lila. Cold morning air moved through the foyer, carrying the scent of rain-wet cedar and the ruined flowers from the garden below. Teresa looked toward the doorway. Do you want me to close it? Lila followed her gaze. The road was still visible beyond the gates. Nothing blocked it. No guard stood waiting for an order. No black vehicle idled near the steps. Yes, Lila said. Teresa closed the door. The sound was soft. Not a lock, only a door. For the first time since arriving in Seattle, Lila understood the difference. Maya went upstairs to change. Teresa brought Lila a robe and warm socks, then left her alone in the library. No one asked her to explain why she had returned. No one told her which room to use. The silence of the house felt different without Dominic inside it. Less controlled, less certain. Lila sat near the window while federal vehicles moved along the lower road. By noon, the broken glass had been cleared from the pavilion. The flowers had been carried away. Blood remained in the pale stone near the altar until rain washed it into the grass. Paige entered the library with 2 cups of coffee and a folder under one arm. They moved Dominic to the federal building downtown. Lila looked up. Has he been charged? Not yet. They are holding him for questioning. And Conrad under guard at the hospital. Kane in custody. He asked for 3 lawyers before they put him in the car. Lila took the coffee. What about Owen's surgery first? Prison second. Paige sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Paige said, My brother has done many things I have defended because they kept this family alive. Lila looked at her. I am not asking you to defend him. I know. Paige rested both hands around her cup. But I need you to understand something. Dominic was raised to believe hesitation killed people. Our father rewarded certainty and punished doubt. Dominic learned to move, first decide, first close the door before anyone could question why. That does not excuse what he did. No. Paige held her gaze. It explains why changing will cost him. Lila looked toward the rain. Then it should cost him. Paige nodded. Yes. 11 days passed. Dominic remained in federal custody while investigators reviewed shipping records, payment trails, and contracts signed under his father's leadership. Lila did not call anyone to demand his release. She did not use the Hartwell name. She did not ask Celeste to arrange a private meeting with prosecutors. Instead, she worked. She helped investigators identify compromised accounts and map the network Kane had used to reach the Vale companies. Dominic's empire had not been clean. He had inherited violence and converted some of it into business, but not all of it. Lila erased nothing. She sent everything to Dominic's attorney and the federal team. On the 12th morning, a black sedan came through the gates. Lila stood in the library when she heard the front door open. Footsteps crossed the foyer. Slow. Familiar. She turned. Dominic stood in the doorway wearing the same dark coat he had worn when federal agents took him away. His face was thinner. A bruise shadowed one cheek. The cut near his ribs had been bandaged beneath his shirt. He stopped when he saw her. For several seconds, neither moved. "You came back," he said. "I did. Why?" Lila placed the file in her hand on the desk. "Because no one told me to." Something shifted in his face. Not relief, something quieter. He entered the room but kept his distance. "They released me pending review," Paige told me. "They may still charge me." "I know." Dominic looked around the library as if searching for evidence that the house had continued without him. Then his eyes returned to her. "I thought you would be gone." "I almost was." What changed? The door stayed open. He absorbed that. Lila stepped closer. "I did not come back because what you did became acceptable." "I know. I did not come back because you saved me." "I know. I came back because I needed to decide what this place meant when you were not standing between me and the exit." Dominic lowered his gaze. "And what does it mean I have not decided yet?" He nodded once. The old Dominic would have asked for an answer. This one remained silent. That afternoon, he asked Lila to meet him in the study. The room had changed. The maps were gone from the walls. The weapons cabinet stood empty. The screens that once displayed security feeds were dark. A leather folder waited on the desk. Dominic did not sit behind it. He stood beside the window. "I owe you an apology." Lila closed the door but did not lock it. "You have apologized before, not completely." He looked at her. "I followed you without your knowledge. I approached you under a name that allowed you to believe I was someone else. I entered Maya's home through my employees. I moved your belongings. I took your phone. I forced you onto a plane. I decided that fear made your consent less important." Lila said nothing. Dominic continued. "I called it protection because that allowed me to believe I was still a good man while I ignored what you wanted." The room remained still. "I believed keeping you alive made every decision acceptable," he said. "It did not. I know. Knowing is not changing." "No." He opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. Lila read the first page. All records connected to her security location, travel devices, and personal accounts had been transferred to her control. No Vale employee could monitor her without written authorization. No one could enter her residence or access her property without permission. The final document was a lease, an apartment in downtown Seattle. Her name appeared alone. She looked up. "What is this? A place that belongs to you? Are you asking me to leave? I am making sure staying is not your only option." The words reached her more deeply than a declaration would have. "Who has a key? You. No copy. No security. Whatever you choose." "And if I choose none?" Dominic's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Then none." Lila closed the folder. "I have conditions. Tell me. No hidden tracking. No decisions about my safety without me. No entering my home, no access to my devices. No men outside my door unless I ask for them. Dominic listened. No threats disguised as concern, she continued. No marriage used as protection or leverage. If I say no, the discussion ends until I choose to continue it. Yes. And if you fail, you leave. Lila looked directly at him. You do not let me leave. I leave. A long breath moved through him. You leave. She took the folder. That evening, Lila moved into the apartment. It was smaller than any room at the estate. The elevator rattled between floors. Pipes knocked behind the walls. The windows looked toward Elliott Bay, where ferries crossed the dark water. Maya helped her buy cheap plates, towels, and a table that required 3 attempts to assemble. Dominic did not arrive. He sent no flowers. He did not ask where she slept. 3 days later, Lila invited him for coffee. He arrived alone. She checked the street before opening the door. No guards. No second vehicle. Dominic stood in the hallway holding a paper bag. What is that coffee? You brought coffee to coffee. I did not know whether you owned any. She stepped aside. You may come in. He entered only after she said it. That became the shape of their relationship. Permission given in small, ordinary moments. Sometimes they ate dinner at the apartment. Sometimes they walked beside the water. Sometimes Lila asked him about the companies he had inherited, and he answered without hiding behind words like business or security. Sometimes they argued. Once Dominic tried to assign 2 guards to her office after a threatening email arrived. Lila told him to leave. He did. The next morning he called and asked whether she wanted help tracing the message. She said yes. Trust returned slowly. Not as forgiveness, as evidence. Conrad Hartwell was convicted of conspiracy, racketeering, attempted murder, and financial crimes. During sentencing, he turned toward Lila. For the first time, there was no desk between them. No locked study. No men waiting to enforce his will. You destroyed this family, he said. Lila looked at him through the courtroom rail. No, I stopped carrying it. The judge sentenced him to decades in federal prison. Gabriel Kane received life after several members of his organization testified against him. Owen Mercer cooperated in exchange for a reduced sentence and exposed every compromised contractor inside the Vale network. Dominic testified too. He admitted which businesses had handled illegal cargo under his father. He surrendered properties accounts and contracts tied to violence. Old allies left. 2 companies collapsed. A port agreement worth millions disappeared overnight. Dominic did not complain. Page restructured what remained into maritime logistics, private risk consulting, and legitimate security work. Teresa sold the estate. She said the house had held too many secrets and too few open doors. Lila launched Hartwell Response from the apartment. Conrad did not own every meaning attached to the name. Maya joined as an investigative consultant. One of their first clients was a woman whose former partner had hidden tracking software on her phone. Lila removed it, then showed her every permission screen and every place control could hide. Months passed. One evening, Dominic arrived with a flat envelope. Lila opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was the surveillance photograph from New Orleans. She stood beneath the gas station lights with rain in her hair, one suitcase at her feet, and the disposable phone held against her chest. You kept this, she said. It was the first time I saw you. Lila looked at him. No. It was the first time you watched me. Dominic accepted the correction. Yes. Why bring it here? Because it belongs to you. She studied the frightened woman in the photograph. That woman had believed freedom meant distance. She had not yet learned that distance could become another place to hide. What do you want me to do with it? Lila asked. Whatever you choose. She placed the photograph inside a folder. On the label she wrote, The Night I Chose Myself. 3 months later, Dominic asked her to meet him at a public park above Elliott Bay. The afternoon was cold and bright. Wind moved through the trees. Children chased birds across the grass. Dominic waited near the railing. No guards, no car at the curb, no ring visible in his hand. Lila stopped beside him. "You look nervous." "I am. That is new. I dislike it." She smiled. Dominic looked toward the water. "I want to marry you." The smile left her face. He continued before she could speak. "You do not have to answer today. What happens if I say no, I go home. And tomorrow I still love you. And if I never change my answer," Dominic's eyes met hers, "then I learn how to love you without owning the future." Lila let the silence remain. A ferry crossed the bay below, then she reached into his coat pocket. His brows lifted. Her fingers found a small ring box. She removed it. "Ask properly." Dominic lowered himself onto one knee. People nearby began to notice. Lila ignored them. "Lila Hartwell." "Will you marry me?" She looked behind her. The path remained open. The city waited. Every direction belonged to her. Yes. They married 6 weeks later at a Seattle courthouse. Lila wore a cream suit. Dominic wore a dark jacket without the Vale family ring. Maya, Paige, Teresa, and Celeste waited inside. At the courthouse door, Dominic stopped. Last chance. To escape. To choose anything else. Lila looked at the open doors. Then at the street behind her. Both remained available. She took his hand. "I already did." They entered together. Months later, their apartment still had unreliable pipes and an elevator that failed twice a month. Dominic burned dinner often enough that Lila bought a second smoke detector. Neighbors borrowed sugar without knowing who he had once been. Lila worked at the kitchen table while ferries moved across the water below. The photograph from New Orleans hung beside her desk. Not as the moment a Mafia king chose his bride, as the moment a frightened woman chose to run. Dominic had once ordered his men to find her before her father did. But no one brought Lila Hartwell to him. She returned only after he learned to open his hand. She stayed because the door remained unlocked. "Do not interfere with federal action." 3 instructions written by people who would not be standing beneath the glass pavilion when the first bullet arrived. Dominic sat beside her in silence. He had not reached for the phone. He had not demanded to know who sent the message. He had not ordered the driver to change direction. That restraint felt unfamiliar. It also felt expensive. Across from them, Maya watched the road through the rain-streaked window. Paige sat beside her, one hand resting on a closed laptop. Conrad's mansion disappeared behind the trees. Lila did not look back. Dominic spoke first. "How much did you send them?" "Enough to prove the meeting happened. Enough to connect Kane to the accounts. Enough to justify surveillance. And enough to detain me." "Yes." His jaw moved once. Lila looked down at her hands. "I am sorry." Dominic turned toward her. "For sending the file, for deciding what risk you were allowed to take." The car passed beneath an overpass. Darkness moved across his face, then released it. "You trusted federal agents before you trusted me. I trusted a system that could remove you from the ceremony without asking for your cooperation. You used me as part of a plan." The words landed cleanly. Lila did not defend herself. "My father used me as payment. Kane wanted to use me as a widow. You used me when you brought me to Seattle. I hated all of you for deciding where I belonged." Her voice lowered. "Then I did the same thing to you." Dominic looked toward the window. Rain drew silver lines over the glass. For several miles, no one spoke. Maya shifted in her seat but said nothing. Paige watched her brother. Dominic's hands rested open on his knees. That was how he held himself when he was trying not to control the room. Finally, he said, "I am angry. I know. With you. I know. With myself." Lila looked at him. He did not return her gaze. "I taught you that fear is permission," he said. "You learned the lesson too well." The car reached the private terminal just before noon. Dominic's jet waited on the runway beneath a low gray sky. No one took Lila's phone. No one searched her bag. No one told her where to sit. She chose the seat beside the window. Dominic sat across from her. Maya and Paige moved toward the front of the cabin, giving them a distance that felt deliberate. After takeoff, Dominic opened a leather folder. He placed it on the table between them. Lila did not touch it. "What is that?" "Everything I should have shown you before." She opened the folder. Names filled the first page. Security officers, drivers, contractors, estate staff, event planners, technical vendors. Some names were marked in blue, others in red. "What do the colors mean?" "Blue means I trust them, and red I do not. There are more red names than blue." "Yes." Lila turned another page. The wedding pavilion floor plan, camera positions, service tunnels, power access, emergency barriers, the maintenance building across the water. A rifle line had been drawn from its upper window to the altar. Lila's stomach tightened. "You mapped the shot." Paige did. Paige looked back from the front. "I enjoy proving people should listen to me." Lila continued. The final section contained Dominic's private codes, the location of every weapon under Vale control, and the names of federal contacts Celeste trusted. She looked up. "You are showing me all of this?" "Yes." "Why?" His eyes remained level. "You said decisions about your life keep happening in rooms you are not allowed to enter." Lila closed the folder. "And now you are in the room." He stood and returned to the front of the jet before she could answer. The gesture should have been small. It was not. By the time they reached Seattle, evening had settled over the sound. The Vale estate glowed against the dark water. White tents covered the lower gardens. Delivery trucks lined the service road. Workers carried flowers, linens, glassware, lighting equipment, and crates of champagne through the rain. The wedding had become a machine. It continued moving as if no one had uncovered a murder plot. Teresa met them in the foyer. Her eyes moved first to Dominic, then to Lila. She took Lila's hands. "You are cold." "I feel worse than cold." Teresa glanced toward her son. Dominic looked away. Celeste crossed the foyer, carrying 2 phones and a stack of documents. "Federal agents are already inside the vendor teams. No one knows which workers are theirs." Paige removed her coat. "Guest list. Confirmed twice. Kane accepted. Conrad accepted. 3 senators declined after discovering courage." Maya looked toward the garden doors. "You are still calling this a wedding?" Celeste followed her gaze. "I am calling it what the guests expect." Lila looked through the glass. Workers were raising the flower arch above the altar. The pavilion stood near the edge of the cliff, its walls transparent against the black water. At 11:19 the following morning, Kane expected the cameras to fail. At 11:19, Dominic was supposed to die. Lila turned toward Paige. "Show me the lighting network." They gathered in the estate command room beneath the west wing. Screens covered one wall. Camera feeds showed the gates, gardens, service entrances, kitchens, roadways, and waterfront. The wedding system ran on a temporary network installed by an outside vendor. Lila sat at the main terminal. She examined access logs while Dominic, Paige, Celeste, and Maya stood behind her. The system had been touched, not breached through force, invited in. Someone had used a legitimate vendor account to create a hidden administrator profile. Lila traced the login history. The first access came from a tablet registered to the event company. The second came from inside the Vale estate. She opened the device signature. Her body went still. Owen Mercer. Dominic looked at the screen. "No." Lila turned toward him. The access came from his private tablet. He has carried that tablet for 3 years. Then someone copied it or he gave them access. Dominic's face hardened. Owen protected my mother during the port conflict. He took a bullet for Paige. Paige did not look at him. Celeste placed a phone on the table. I found 3 transfers from a cane shell company to an account registered under Owen's former wife. Dominic looked at her. How long have you known 6 hours? And you waited. I wanted proof. Lila watched the pain move behind his eyes. It was small, controlled, still visible. A man Dominic trusted had been standing beside him while selling the doors to his house. Lila said quietly, "Knowing someone cared about you does not mean they told you the truth." Dominic looked at her. The room went silent. He understood. Not only Owen, not only Dean. Everything between them. Paige opened another file. Owen controls the wedding command station tomorrow. If we remove him now, Kane knows the plan is exposed. Dominic looked toward the camera wall. We leave him in place. Maya stared at him. That sounds dangerous. It is. Lila turned back to the terminal. We let him believe the hidden account still works. Dominic approached. What are you thinking? I build a second network beneath his. Every command he sends goes where I want it to go. And the cameras, they appear to fail on his screen. In reality, they stream directly to the federal team. Paige leaned closer. Can you do that by morning? Lila looked at the lines of code. Yes. Dominic studied her. Do you need anything? Coffee. Every credential Owen can access. A list of devices brought inside the estate this week. He nodded, then stopped. Anything else? Lila looked at him. No. Dominic left without trying to stay. She worked through the night. Maya slept in a chair for 20 minutes at a time. Paige moved between the command room and the security office collecting access records. Celeste coordinated with federal agents using a phone that never seemed to leave her hand. At 2 a.m, Teresa brought sandwiches. At 3, the rain stopped. At 4:15, Lila found a second compromise. The emergency barrier system had been altered. The steel panels designed to seal the pavilion during an attack would close over every glass wall except the east side, the side facing the maintenance building. Owen had not only created a blind spot, he had created a shooting lane. Lila corrected the code but left the false configuration visible to him. At 5:30, she tested the hidden feed. Every camera streamed to a federal server in real time. At 6, she sat back. Her eyes burned. Her hands ached. Maya placed coffee beside her. You did it? Yes. Can Kane still shoot through the glass? Yes. Maya looked toward the screen showing the empty pavilion. That does not sound like victory. It is not. The ceremony needed to appear normal. Kane needed to expose his men. Conrad needed to believe the plan remained intact. Every person in the pavilion would be standing inside the trap with them. At 7, Lila went upstairs. The wedding dress waited in her room. Silk fell from the hanger in one clean line. No lace, no heavy jewels, no Hartwell crest. Teresa had chosen it only after asking Lila what she wanted. That fact made the dress harder to hate. Maya stood behind her while she stepped into it. The silk fit close through the waist and fell softly to the floor. Lila looked at herself in the mirror. For most of her life, men had arranged rooms before she entered them. Her father arranged the marriage. Dominic arranged her escape. Kane arranged her widowhood. Federal agents arranged the ceremony. Today, she knew where every camera stood. She knew which doors would lock. She knew which men would lie. That did not make her safe. It made her present. Teresa entered carrying a small wooden box. Inside lay Catherine Hartwell's silver key. Lila touched it. I thought it was in my room. Dominic gave it to me after New Orleans. He was afraid it would be lost during the attack. Teresa fastened the chain around Lila's neck. The key rested against the silk. "You do not have to walk down those stairs," Teresa said. Lila met her eyes in the mirror. "If I leave, Kane finds another place to pull the trigger." "That is not what I asked." Lila looked at the woman in the glass. "I am walking because I know exactly what this is." Teresa placed both hands on her shoulders. "And if you change your mind, I walk away." "Good." A knock sounded at the door. Dominic waited outside. He did not enter. Lila opened it. He wore a black suit and a white shirt. No family ring, no tie pin, no visible weapon. For 1 second, the man who controlled half the ports on the Pacific coast forgot how to speak. Lila watched the reaction cross his face. "Do not make it beautiful," she said. His mouth moved faintly. "I was going to say armed." She almost smiled. His eyes dropped to the silver key, then returned to her face. "I can cancel this. The federal team said not to. I am not asking them." Lila studied him. "Why now?" "Because you are standing here in a dress chosen for a marriage you never agreed to. I agreed to the operation. That is not the same thing." "No." Dominic took 1 step closer, then stopped. "I need to know the answer is yours." "It is. If you tell me to end it, the guests leave. The agents adjust. Kane finds another day, and more people die while we wait." "Possibly." Lila looked toward the staircase. "You do not get to choose for me." "I know." There was no argument in his voice, no hesitation, only acceptance. She looked back at him. "Then walk beside me until the doors open." He offered his arm. Lila did not take it. She walked beside him. The lower hall was filled with flowers and quiet movement. Federal agents wore catering uniforms and security badges. Guests arrived in dark cars. Cameras flashed beyond the front windows. Conrad entered smiling, a polished father of the bride. Gabriel Kane arrived 10 minutes later wearing a navy suit and an expression of mild amusement. He greeted Teresa. He kissed Celeste's hand. He shook Dominic's attorney's hand. He looked at Lila from across the foyer. Not like a woman, like paperwork. Owen Mercer stood near the garden doors. His shoulder was straight beneath his black suit. His expression carried the same calm loyalty Dominic had trusted for years. When Lila passed him, Owen lowered his head. "Miss Hartwell." She met his eyes. "Mr. Mercer." Nothing changed in his face. He had no idea she knew. The ceremony began at 11. The glass pavilion looked almost unreal beneath the pale sky. White roses lined the aisle. Rainwater remained on the grass. Beyond the walls, Puget Sound stretched dark and cold toward the horizon. Guests filled the chairs. Politicians sat beside businessmen. Businessmen sat beside criminals. Criminals sat beside federal agents pretending to be relatives. Dominic stood at the altar. Paige took her place near the front row. Celeste remained beside the side entrance. Teresa sat alone on the groom's side. Conrad waited at the beginning of the aisle. Lila stopped beside him. He offered his arm. She looked at it. "You will walk alone." "Yes." His smile remained in place for the guests. "You are embarrassing me. That is the least painful thing happening to you today." His eyes hardened. Lila stepped onto the aisle without him. The room shifted. People turned. Cameras lifted. Dominic watched her approach. He did not look like a man waiting to claim something. He looked like a man waiting for her answer. Lila reached the altar. The officiant opened his book. At 11:16, Lila's watch vibrated once. The hidden network detected a new login. Owen had entered the command system. The officiant began speaking about loyalty and union. Lila heard almost none of it. At 11:17, a service door opened near the rear of the pavilion. 2 men wearing catering uniforms entered. Their shoes were wrong, heavy soles. No kitchen worker wore shoes designed for wet ground and recoil. Celeste saw them too. She touched her ear. Federal agents shifted among the guests. At 11:18, Owen initiated the camera shutdown. On his command screen beneath the pavilion, every feed went black. On Lila's watch, every feed remained live. She tapped the hidden command. The streams redirected to federal servers. The officiant turned toward Dominic. "Do you, Dominic Vale, take Lila Hartwell?" Dominic looked at Lila. Not the officiant. Not the guests. Her. A second vibration touched her wrist. The emergency barrier system had received a command. East panel disabled. Lila reversed it. The maintenance building camera showed movement behind the upper window. A dark shape. A rifle barrel. The federal team was not yet in position. Owen had moved early. Lila looked at Dominic. Down. She hit him with both hands. The first bullet shattered the glass behind the altar. The sound tore through the pavilion. Guests screamed. Dominic pulled Lila to the floor and covered her with his body. The officiant fell behind the table. Another shot struck the flower arch. White petals exploded through the air. Steel barriers began descending over the glass walls. The north wall sealed. The west wall sealed. The east panel stopped halfway. Owen had overridden the correction manually. A clear line remained between the rifle team and the altar. Dominic reached inside his jacket. Lila caught his wrist. "Wait." She tapped her watch. The fire suppression system activated over the east wall. Water blasted across the glass, distorting the rifle team's view. The next shot missed. Paige drew a weapon from beneath her jacket. "Move the guests to the west exit." Federal agents rose from 3 separate rows. Weapons appeared. The 2 false caterers opened fire. Celeste pulled Teresa behind a stone column. Dominic shielded Lila while crawling toward the lowered barrier. Gunfire struck the steel above them. "Can you close the east panel?" he asked. "Owen is blocking it locally. Where is he command station?" Dominic looked toward the stairwell leading beneath the pavilion. "I am going down." "No." The word left Lila before she could stop it. He looked at her. She heard herself. Not a command born from ownership. Fear. "You are the target," she said. "And he controls the barriers. I can lock him out if I reach the service terminal. That terminal is 10 feet from the east wall. So we move together." Dominic's eyes held hers. Then he nodded. Not because he had no opinion, because the choice belonged to both of them. Paige covered them as they crossed behind the altar. Glass shattered around their feet. Maya appeared near the west exit, pulling an injured guest behind a table. Lila reached the service terminal. The screen showed Owen's local access. She entered the override. Denied. Again. Denied. Owen had changed the physical key. Dominic fired twice toward the maintenance building. "Lila, I need 30 seconds. You have 10. She opened the panel beneath the terminal and pulled the control cable free. The barrier released. The steel panel dropped over the east wall. A bullet struck it at the same moment. The impact rang through the pavilion. The shooting lane closed. Dominic looked at her. "You did it." The stairwell door burst open. Owen Mercer stepped onto the pavilion floor with a pistol in his hand. His face held no panic, only disappointment. He aimed at Dominic. "I told Kane you would never see past loyalty." Dominic raised his weapon. Why Owen gave a tired smile. "Because loyalty does not pay for a life after men like you are finished using it. I trusted you. You trusted me to stand behind you. You never asked what it cost." Owen's finger tightened. A shot cracked from the side. Celeste fired first. The bullet struck Owen's shoulder. His weapon spun away. Federal agents tackled him before he reached it. Dominic stared at the man bleeding on the floor. Owen looked back at him. 12 years, Dominic said. Owen laughed through the pain. 12 years of opening doors for a king. Another burst of gunfire sounded from the rear corridor. Kane's men had entered through the catering tunnel. Guests crowded against the sealed barriers. Federal agents moved toward the service entrance. Conrad appeared beside Lila. His hand closed around her upper arm. "I am getting you out." Lila pulled away. "Do not touch me. The lower road is open, because Kane left it open for you." Conrad's face changed, only slightly. "Enough." Lila understood. "You were still going to take me. I was going to save you. No, you were going to deliver me." Gabriel Kane stepped from behind the service wall. He carried a pistol fitted with a suppressor. His expression remained calm. Conrad turned. "Kane, you said the girl would cooperate." Lila looked at her father. The final piece settled into place. Conrad had never planned to flee with her. He planned to hand her over once Dominic died. Conrad raised both hands. "This can still be managed." Kane shot him in the leg. The sound was soft. Conrad collapsed with a cry. Guests screamed again. Kane grabbed Lila from behind and pressed the weapon beneath her jaw. Dominic turned. Blood darkened his shirt near the ribs where glass or a bullet had cut him. He lifted his weapon. Kane tightened his arm around Lila. "One more step and the alliance becomes a funeral." Dominic stopped. The room narrowed to the distance between them. Kane smiled. "Drop the gun." Dominic's hand remained steady. Lila looked at him. Every instinct in his body demanded movement. Control, force, action. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "Trust me." Dominic lowered the weapon, then placed it on the floor. Kane laughed. So the rumors were true. Dominic's eyes never left Lila. "What rumors?" "That you became sentimental." Lila's watch remained against her wrist. The fire suppression controls were still open. Kane dragged her toward the service exit. His grip tightened. The silver key rested against her chest. Her mother had carried it when she tried to leave Conrad. A key to a house that never let her go. Lila tapped the watch once. The ceiling system released. A wall of white suppressant foam exploded over the pavilion. Visibility vanished. Kane cursed. Lila drove the silver key backward into his gun hand. He shouted and released her. She dropped to the floor. A shot fired into the ceiling. Dominic moved through the white cloud. He struck Kane once across the jaw and drove him into the stone floor. The pistol slid away. Federal agents reached them seconds later. Kane fought until 3 men pinned him down. Conrad lay near the aisle, one hand pressed to his bleeding leg. Paige stood over him with a weapon lowered at her side. "The father of the bride usually stays for photographs," she said. Conrad looked toward Lila. "Help me." She stared at him. For years, those words would have moved her. Not because he deserved help, because he had trained her to believe his need mattered more than her pain. Lila stepped back. A federal medic reached him. Not her. The pavilion filled with commands. Weapons were collected. Guests were searched. Kane's men were arrested near the lower road. The rifle team surrendered after agents surrounded the maintenance building. Owen was carried out on a stretcher in restraints. Dominic remained beside Lila. His hand hovered near her back without touching. "Are you hurt?" "No." The answer came too quickly. He looked at the blood on her dress. "It is not mine." His eyes closed for 1 second, then opened. Assistant United States Attorney Evelyn Price entered through the west doors wearing a dark coat over body armor. She looked first at Kane, then at Conrad, then at Dominic. Her expression gave nothing away. "Mr. Vale." Dominic stepped away from Lila. "You have a warrant." "Yes." Lila's breath caught. Price held up the document. "We need you to come with us." Dominic did not resist. He removed his watch and handed it to Paige. Then he turned toward Lila. Federal agents approached with handcuffs. She looked at his wrists. The image cut through her harder than the gunfire. "I am sorry." Dominic's face remained unreadable. "Did you know this would happen?" "I knew it might. And you sent the file anyway. I thought they would take you before the ceremony, but they did not." "No." A federal agent fastened the cuffs. The metal clicked. Lila's eyes burned. "I could not let you die." Dominic looked at her for a long moment. "You still chose the cage." The words were not cruel. That made them worse. An agent touched his arm. Dominic began to turn. "Dominic." He stopped. The pavilion had gone strangely quiet around them. White flowers covered the floor. Broken glass glittered beneath the lights. Conrad was being lifted onto a stretcher. Kane was dragged toward the doors. Lila stood in the center of the wreckage wearing a wedding dress stained with someone else's blood. "I love you." The confession left her without protection. Dominic's eyes changed. Pain, love, anger. All of it held beneath the same controlled surface. "Then choose what happens next," he said. The agents led him away. Lila remained where he left her. Maya reached her first. Teresa came next. Neither tried to hold her. The doors stood open at the far end of the pavilion. Beyond them, rain had begun again. Lila lifted the front of her dress and walked. She passed the damaged flower arch, the broken glass, the armed agents, the guests speaking in frightened whispers. She crossed the garden. No guard stopped her. No one called her name. At the outer gate, the security officer stepped aside. For the first time in her life, Lila ran, and no powerful man sent anyone after her. She ran down the wet road until the estate lights disappeared behind the trees. Her shoes slipped on the pavement. She removed them and kept going barefoot. Rain soaked the silk. Cold reached her bones. She did not know where she was going. That was the first honest thing about the day. Maya found her near dawn beneath the roof of a closed bus shelter. Lila sat on the bench with the dress pulled around her feet. Cars moved along the road beyond the trees. Maya approached slowly. "Where are we going?" Lila looked toward the dark line of the water. "I do not know." Maya sat beside her. "Good." Lila turned. Maya looked ahead. "Then nobody else knows either." They remained there until the sky began to lighten. At 6:15, a city bus stopped in front of them. The driver opened the door and stared at Lila's ruined dress. "Wedding trouble." Lila looked down at the silk. "Yes. You getting on?" She looked toward the road leading back to the Vale estate. The gates were hidden beyond the trees. No one had called. No car had arrived. Dominic had been taken away. For the first time, returning and leaving carried equal weight. Lila stood. The bus driver waited. Maya stood beside her. Lila stepped away from the open doors. The bus pulled off without them. They walked back toward the estate. The road felt longer in daylight. At the first gate, the guard saw her approach and pressed a button. The iron opened. No questions, no orders. At the second gate, the same thing happened. Teresa stood beneath the front entrance when Lila reached the house. Her face held no surprise, only exhaustion. "Did someone call you? No. Did anyone ask you to return? No." Teresa looked at the wet dress and Lila's bare feet. "Then why are you here?" Lila looked past her into the quiet foyer. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a place where a man had finally allowed the door to remain open. "Because I chose to come back." Teresa stepped aside. Lila entered. Behind her, the front door remained open to the morning air.